Due to increases in U.S. Department of Justice funding in the last decade or so, the use of police in schools has substantially increased. When schools increase police presence, there has been a higher rate of reported crime to law enforcement. The school to prison pipeline is an invisible pipeline in which school age students are being railroaded to prisons for a number of reasons. One reason students are being railroaded to the justice system are due to harsh discipline policies or zero tolerance systems set up in schools, which result in an increase in suspensions. Violation of school policies and behavioral problems are sometimes handled by school resource officers or law enforcement with arresting power rather than resorting to other methods. School resource officers learn about more crimes which lead to an increase in arrests, which primarily affects children under the age of 15. Studies show that if students are incarcerated or arrested, they are less likely to graduate high school, and some criminal offenses limit students' eligibility for grants and loans for college. School resource officers are often more present in cities with larger populations of students of color, which has led to more disparities in the criminal justice system. Studies show that when these students are released from the justice system, they are reconvicted or recommitted to the state within 3 years, exhibiting that the criminal justice system is not working. On the other hand, some argue that there is evidence that shows school resource officers increase school safety and help law enforcement agencies with drug crimes in and out of schools. However, with the added safety that school resource officers bring, they also bring an increase in arrests for minor offenses in young children. These arrests disproportionately target our students of color. Teacher bias also leads to harsh and inequitable school discipline. Often, teachers aren't aware of their own biases and will discipline or suspend students of color at a higher rate. Studies show that suspensions and developmentally inappropriate punishments are disproportionately issued to Black, Hispanic, and Native American students. Suspensions are also found to have little change in students' behavior. When students are suspended from class, it adversely affects achievement because they are missing instruction. When looking at 10 years of research, it showed that Black students are found to be permanently hurt by being suspended over and over for things that were overlooked by white students committing the same offense. Since students of color are suspended at a higher rate, they end up back in neighborhoods or homes with very little supervision and end up getting in trouble or committing crimes which introduce them to the justice system. School arrests decrease graduation rates, which negatively impacts school and community safety. The systems are cyclical in nature and are negatively impacting marginalized populations. Education is a major predictor of wealth. Lack of education hinders upward mobility. Poor communities and schools have higher rates of crime, which negatively affect educational achievement. One way that schools can address the school-to-prison pipeline is to reduce arrests of students for minor offenses that implement more developmentally appropriate and racially equitable discipline. Invest in schools, not prisons. Virginia spends $135,000 to incarcerate a teen for 1 year. Incarceration and juvenile detention systems have failed to change behavior. Invest that money into education of our students rather than our failing prisons. Another major way that schools are dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline is by implementing restorative justice programs and practices, which is an alternative to suspensions, expulsions, and arrests. Restorative circles are when students, teachers, and/or communities come together where they have a voice, problem solve, are accountable, and have the opportunity to listen, repair, and transform. Through restorative justice programs, students come together to own their behaviors and collaborate with individuals that may have caused them harm. Restorative justice programs are solution-oriented so that the cycles don't repeat themselves. Students learn how to advocate for themselves and become an agent of change. Restorative practices are changing the systems and an alternative to the systems that would formally drive students to the justice system. Schools should work to create a system of care targeting students with disruptive behavior for improvement. Good teaching is student-centered, and student-centered teaching should be anti-racist and culturally responsive. Teachers can receive anti-racist and restorative practices training. Teachers should start with themselves, self-evaluate, and become cognizant of their own biases. Checking instruction and practices through an anti-racist and culturally responsive lens. Teachers need to be mindful of their power. Look at the data. Look at the schools and class suspension rates and grades of students of color in relation to white students. Does the data show bias or disproportionality? Educators can continue to learn and grow to change the systems that harm students and become more self aware through book clubs and professional development. Practices should be reflective and representative of their students and their lives. By intentionally making it a goal to continue to learn, grow, and empower students and become an agent of change, teachers can continue to work toward changing the systems that harm our marginalized populations and dismantle the school to prison pipeline to ensure equity to all students.